And we will call the meeting to order a little late tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Cody, would you do a roll call of the board, please?
Supervisor Melky,
Here.
Clerk Cody here. Wow. Trustee Brown,
Here.
Trustee Thering,
Here.
and Treasurer Rice and Trustee Bills are excused.
Thank you. Happy to entertain any motions regarding the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Cody, support by Brown. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion to approve the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Agenda's been approved. We have no presentations tonight, no public hearings. That takes us to item 7, public comment. Do we have anybody in the remote gallery?
No.
Public comment is restricted to 3 minutes regarding items on the agenda. If you choose to address the public, please state your name and address for the record. And with that, we'll open up the public comment at 7:12 p.m. Mr. Gunning.
Hello, good evening. Ben Gunning, Golf Center, 2270 East Broomfield Road, Mount Pleasant. I'm so used to talking on the phone. So I've got 3 things, and hopefully I can squeeze it into the 3 minutes. First of all, I wanted to bring up the Bill Houck opening on the trustees, and looking at the candidates. I guess I saw one thing that jumped out to me in particular was in the last cycle through, 2 of the trustees were adamant about that the replacement for Trustee Micas needed to be a Democrat because Mr. Micas was a Democrat. The one person was very adamant was Mr. Worley. The second one was Tim Lannon. In fact, Tim Lannon's only question to the candidates, or the applicants, was whether they were Republican or if they were a Democrat. So when you're looking over the options, I think that needs to be put into mind. Number 2, I brought up last time about the lawsuits with the concerned citizens, the extraction group, and the Zalad suit. And I talked about how it should have been discussed beforehand as they held out an olive branch, and it should have been negotiated. And I think it very well could have easily been negotiated. So just for you guys, because you are having the fiduciary responsibility of the township, we have a total balance up through November of 22 on the Zalad suit out of the general fund of $46,753.30. The concerned citizens, $57,572.99. I went through every agenda from June of 20, which is when the billing started. Together, they totaled $104,326.29. So when you have a situation come up like this again, and there is the option of sitting at a table, take it. $104,000 would have put in a lot of sidewalks. Number 3, as I was looking through the agendas, I kind of looked at it and said, you know what? What's the attendance been like? So, update through 2022. This is just for 2022. Trustee Bills, 3 excused absences. Supervisor Milky, 4. Clerk Cody, 2. Secretary or Treasurer Rice, 8 absences. Trustee Brown, 6. Trustee Thering, 3. Trustee Houck, 0. So the Planning Commission has a standard of 3 absences. You remember that. So you guys got an attendance issue. And when you have something as important as last week's agenda items up on there, it's unfair for you to go in with 6 people. Unfair. So I don't care what the excuse was, that person needed to be there. That was too important of a mission or meeting to miss. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else in virtual? Seeing no one coming forward or else coming forward, we'll close public comment at 7:16 PM. That brings us to reports, boards, and comments. I just want to lift up a couple things regarding the current planning commission. We have 3 openings. So far, we have received 3 applications. Thrilled to see those. I plan on making a nomination at our next meeting for the planning commission. I did want to ask our board members if they're familiar or aware of Kayla Archer, I believe Slezak, so I don't know if that's her maiden name or vice versa, if anybody knows her. But she was the one applicant that I didn't know, so I'll make a point of reaching out and getting to know her a bit. EDA is coming up in a couple months. So far, we've had, I think there's 3 seats, forgive me if my memories are incorrect. A couple applied already, and there was a third at the last EDA meeting that indicated that they would be reapplying, but obviously we always open that up. So be aware of those upcoming seats. And then we do have a trustee spot that we need to fill. We've received 3 applications, and I just kind of want to take this spot in our agenda to have any discussion that this board wants to have with regards to process. So I'm open to.
I definitely think that we should talk about process, and I know Trustee Rice and Trustee Bills wanted to be involved in this also, so I don't know how involved you want to get on as far as a process on how.
I certainly don't want to make that choice without
them.
a full board, ideally. But
We don't really have much of a choice, because it's gonna happen the next meeting. And you and I had went through that in 2020, September of 2020? 19. Thank you, no, appreciate that. I guess I had no issue with the process, I thought that was okay. Which the process was
Inviting.
every,
Did we invite the people?
I'm sorry.
We invited the people in to speak, right?
Yes, we invited all the candidates in to, if they had something that they wanted to say. After that was done, I believe, after they gave their presentation, if a trustee or clerk or supervisor or treasurer wanted to ask a question, we were allowed to ask a question. It was pretty uniform, every question, the same question was asked by the same person, so.
are you saying you'd like to see that again? guess
I have
is what
no
I'm
issue. That's the only way I know. And then
Yeah,
after
I mean-
after everything was done, then there was nominations and a roll call vote.
asking. Clerk Cody, do you have feelings on what you'd like to see?
I just remember inviting them in and,
So is
Ask
that
some
a
questions,
process you'd like to go through?
yeah,
Okay.
Well, I didn't. do
Trustee
that.
Brown?
What'd you say?
just inviting.
Oh,
In-
invite them in, ask them a
yeah.
question? I've never been through this, so I guess this is so new to me, so, other boards that I've, been in on the construction side and the companies, I know what we do, but as far as a trustee in Union Township, this is the first time I've ever been through this, so, yeah, I like that. I don't mind that at all. I think, as long as it's fair as possible and everybody, it's fair across the board. I guess looking for other ideas. I guess, yeah, that's fine.
I'm comfortable with that too.
I
And
don't
I,
have any problem with that.
not that our other trustees get a vote tonight, but I know they've both expressed whatever we came up with, they would be good with, so.
I mean, I think
I'm
it's
okay with that
important.
process.
I think it's important that we do that and then we communicate that to the
Yeah.
applicants so that they know exactly what they're going into so they can be prepared. But,
Okay,
you know,
fair.
for them to get up, like, you know, like I said, you and I went through that and, you know, I got to get up and say my piece. I answered the questions as best I could and then, you know, then it's up to the board to make that decision. And it kind of lets the public see, you know, maybe they don't follow the, know exactly what the application looks like on the agenda in the sense of online, but they get the kind of a one-on-one with the candidates and, or applicants, and I have no issue with how it went the last time and I was a part of it, so.
Great, so no objection to this. All right, so we'll proceed that way. Here's the one concern I have, and not with the process we were just talking about, but the timeline. You know, if Treasurer Rice's absence tonight was not expected, Trustee Bill's absence was expected, being that she's on vacation. And this is a matter that's pretty important, and I didn't feel we want to be absent any members if possible. But if we get into a position on the 11th, which would be our next meeting, where something happens, somebody else is ill, or something comes up and we're short, that's not ideal from my perspective. I'd like to see all five or
I
all
believe
six of us
Trustee
here.
Bills is going to be gone again next week, or the next meeting. I thought she said the next 2 meetings.
I thought I heard this meeting and the
I'll
next
have to
meeting for
clarify
sure.
that. I knew she was in California now, but, So what about the possibility of a special meeting? Like,
If she's back again.
because if we get to the 11th, and we need to, for whatever reason, things get delayed, then we're pushing up against that 14th. We've got 24-hour timeline in which we can,
If it gets all 6 here, I whatever we got to do to get 6 here, I would.
I
I'd be
will
for
reach
it.
out to Trustee Bills, and I'll let you know, and
Wait just
then,
one minute.
if we need to call a special meeting, I'll have one called, and hopefully, one that we can get all attend, and reach out to the candidates, and hopefully they can attend too. Reasonable?
February 8th is your next meeting.
Oh, 8th, excuse me. I was thinking the 11th for some reason, thanks. Gives us a little extra time. So I guess if the 8th came and something happened, we'd have a little bit of time before the 14th. I just don't want to get in a position where we end up having the county make that decision, right?
I don't either. We
Okay.
need to
I
have.
will-
I think we need to have a plan B.
Yeah, so I'll reach out to Trustee Bills and verify circumstances and then communicate to the board, so. Anything else on that?
Thank you.
Thanks.
January monthly activity report, thank you for that. I think I had a question on that. If anybody else has one and is ready, go ahead. Otherwise, I gotta look mine up.
My comments from the planning commission side, I think, are going to come from Mr. Nanny. so.
Okay. So on the activity report, I just was noting, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 apartments have applied to the Michigan Tax Tribunal. I'm sorry, 6. 6 of the 7 that are going to the MTT were all apartments. My assumption, and I haven't talked to the assessor on this, is probably because of the low attendance we're seeing at CMU, that they're applying for tax. No.
I'm sure that's one of the reasons.
I just,
Some of these are what I call serial filers. You just do it every year.
yeah, and I kind of remember some of that. It was just typically not this many, it didn't seem like. So right above that, and this is on page 29 of the agenda, it's the second to last paragraph in the finance section, talks about the CPI, and so this is both a public statement, so the public's aware of it if they're not already, but also a question that I have. But because of the inflation rates we've seen, for the first time, I think, since Proposal A was passed in 1994, we're going to see a CPI on our property assessments go to 5%. So that means everybody that's paying property taxes going to see that 5% increase. And I just want people to be prepared for that. The question I had, and I don't know if this is better addressed to the assessor, but I'll address it to our manager, and if you need to get back to me, you can. It says, what this means is that the 7.9% CPI that we saw will be used to allow the revenue generated by all taxing jurisdictions to increase by 7.9% over 2022 revenues before millage reduction would lower the maximum allowable millage rates. And I wasn't quite sure I understood what that was really getting at.
That has to do with the Headley rollback. And if you need a technical explanation, I'll have to get back to you on that.
I'm curious.
There's,
I mean, I understand.
we'll get back to you on the Headley rollback. There's
Something in there.
additions, subtractions in values and property compared to the prior years. And the whole point of Headley is that you don't generate more revenue than the prior year just simply because of inflation. And there's a complicated calculation that has to do with that. Your earlier statement about assessments going up 5%, it's actually taxable values that are capped at 5%. Assessments
Thank
can
you.
go up anything at any rate. Assessed values can change at any rate, whatever the appropriate rate is.
Correct. Yes. Okay. That maybe is enough explanation for me. Thank you.
Mhm.
In any event, I did want to let the public know that expect changes in their tax bills this year. Thank you. Any other questions on the activity report? Thanks for having that. Appreciate it. So Planning Commission and ZBA updates by our Community and Economic Development Director, Mr. Nanny. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. We'll start off with our EDA board. The Economic Development Authority Board met on the 17th of January. They had one item of business on their agenda. This is one of our ongoing steps towards updating, replacing, and relocating our sewage pump station number 1 on Enterprise Drive off of East Picker Road. The item of business they had was to approve an easement for Consumers Energy to install the new electrical service for the relocated pump station. We're still in process related to getting that equipment and such to be able to start the actual construction, but this easement is an early step so they can get that electrical service in place to serve that facility when we're ready to get going on it. And they did approve that easement. The Planning Commission also met on the 17th. They had a meeting with individual members of the Sidewalks and Pathways Prioritization Committee. It was an informal discussion on sidewalk topics. One of the items that was in their packet was a version of the memo that you have that was sent out earlier today that just noted some of the sidewalk projects that are ongoing. Just as a comment related to that memo, I'm happy to answer questions that you may have, but I just note that during 2022, we had a total of 7,350 linear feet of new sidewalks installed. 3 of those projects were township projects. 1 was a private development project. And as memo notes, there are a number of public and private projects anticipated to be happening in 2023. So they did have conversation about some of those priorities. In addition to that discussion with the Sidewalk Committee members, they did adopt their 2022 annual report, which you also received a copy of. They had a busy year. There were a total of, I believe it was 18 separate site plan actions, 11 separate development projects involved, in addition to having their action on the first plan unit development project, which was the Prestige Center Assisted Living Facility. You have one of the items on your agenda tonight. That's part of that report, which is the second set of what the Planning Commission referred to as punch list zoning ordinance amendments, items that we've developed over time working with the new ordinance. So the last item of business that they had on their agenda was to start the conversation about the master plan. As we've talked about during the budget process, the Planning Commission is required to review the master plan at least every 5 years. The Michigan Planning Enabling Act requires that. The expectation is that that review process will eventually result in an action by the Plan Commission to either say, we love the plan, it doesn't need to be changed, we're happy with it, or we feel that there are some changes or revisions or amendments that need to be made, and the plan, and the plan should be updated. That action would then either begin the process, potentially an update, or, as I said, if they decide that no changes are necessary, then the plan is simply good for another 5 years, potentially. Now, beyond the 5-year review, of course, the Plan Commission is using the master plan on a regular basis, but this 5-year process is in the law essentially to make sure the document is not gathering dust on the shelf just to have that review formally at least every 5 years. So those were the items on the Plan Commission's agenda. I'm happy to answer any questions about those or the reports that you received.
I'm happy to see the long list of site plans.
I'm good. Thank you.
Looks like good news.
Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to item 9D on the agenda, board member reports. Trustee Brown?
I'll have a report today.
Trustee Theron?
No, sir.
I have a bit today. Mr. Nanny talked about the EDA some. We met last week. Just a note, manager and myself will be meeting with Jack Hoffweber. He's the new manager for MDOT, who was put in place, I believe, in May, but he kind of reached out, wanted to introduce himself. So we'll be meeting next Tuesday. He just wants to discuss upcoming projects that MDOT has and kind of keep us in the loop and create a communications channel. We had an intergovernmental meeting today with the county, city, and the tribe. Just a brief overview. City went through their goals and objectives for '23. The biggest note I would say is just the struggle with some of the costs that they're seeing in projects they've already scheduled and trying to keep the budget in sound place. Got an update on the sheriff's office. The only real news on that I'd point out is anticipated completion date, December 5th, 2024. Update on the MRF. They're still proceeding with that. Everything we've heard from Commissioner Engler lined up with what the county administrator and the commissioners that were there indicated, which is looking at and then using that as a regional hub. I think that's key, right? If you haven't picked up on that from Mr. Engler. Mr. Stuhldreher gave an update on the Aquatic Center Recreation Authority. Something I learned today, but this was from a recent meeting that our manager had with their board, and you can jump in if I misstate any of this. They had hoped to have a ballot initiative in 2023 because of various laws in our state laws on elections. They're having to wait on that until 2024. Is that a fair statement? And then a tribal update. Eric Rodriguez was there. He indicated the new tribal school being built is set for completion for fall of '24. So I don't know, I didn't think of asking at the time if that meant they would be opening for tenants in the fall of '24 or the building would be completed and they would transition at some point to that new building. Road Commission meeting yesterday. Trustee Theron, Clerk Cody, myself were in attendance, as well as our director Kim. I keep wanting to say Rice Smith. My apologies. And Mr. Stuhldreher. I just thought I'd highlight a couple brief things from that. Road Commission identified a few projects that they were going to undertake this year, regardless pretty much of what Township does. That is a chip and seal over on Baseline between, must be Millbrook and Whiteville. The light that we're gonna see down here on Crawford and Pickard. Crack and seal on Lincoln right here between Remus and Pickard. And of course the Broomfield project east of Mission on over to Isabella. So those are projects they're going to take on. They did ask for our help on some of that Broomfield Road project. I can share details with trustees later if they want to see those. And let's see, what am I missing? That was a lot for me. So with that, we'll move the agenda to agenda item 10, consent agenda. Happy to entertain any motions, and who had warrants?
I did. I'm satisfied.
Motion to approve.
Support.
I have one question for our clerk. Mission Creek Park Pathway is part of the consent agenda, which is a resolution. Do you want
Do
to
it.
pull that out for a roll call, or
Just do roll call
on this, and we'll,
Oh. I don't know.
It's not required.
not required, well, you need it for the yeas and nays, and we'll just do roll call on consent agenda, and if
Okay.
this board is okay with it, we'll apply that to that resolution.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion by Cody, support by Brown, is that correct? Any questions, debate? All in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, we need roll call, don't we?
Yeah, sure.
Would you do roll call, please? My apologies.
Supervisor Milky?
Yes.
Trustee Brown?
Yes.
Trustee Thering?
Yes.
Clerk Cody, yes?
I know you like to do roll call on those resolutions.
Yeah.
Consent agenda passes unanimously. That brings us to item 11, new business on our agenda, adoption of the redevelopment Ready Communities Program participation resolution. Mr. Stuhldreher, would you like to introduce this?
Thank you and good evening, everyone. We're asking the board to consider the adoption of a resolution of intent to participate in the Michigan Economic Development Corporation's Redevelopment Ready Communities Program. And if approved, this would allow the administration to pursue the Redevelopment Ready certification. This is something that the Planning Commission has looked at, and they are recommending to the Board of Trustees that we pursue that. This program is voluntary. It doesn't cost anything other than staff time. It's a program made available to communities of all sizes, shapes and sizes across the state. It's overseen by MEDC. The program has been in existence for quite some time. It's gone through some revisions over the years. Most recently, 2021, it went through some rather significant revisions. This is a program that measures and then certifies that local governments have integrated things like transparency, predictability, efficiencies as it relates to the land use approval process, whether it's new development or redevelopment, construction of ordinances such as the zoning code, administrative processes to help shepherd those applications through. In the past, we have not, the township to my knowledge anyways, has not formally engaged with the MEDC regarding this certification, but in the last several years, primarily since we brought Mr. Nanny on board, we have been developing internal processes, procedures, adopted a zoning code, the master plan, all with redevelopment-ready community best practices in the back of our minds. So we've been aware of those programs, aware of those best practices. So from my perspective, we're kind of, I'll say, well on our way to certification. And now we're going to go through a formal process to try to receive that certification. And this is messaging to the developers of the world, local, state, national, that Union Township conducts business as it relates to land use approval processes in a manner that they can count on, rely on, make some sense. And the intent from the state perspective is those communities that are certified, I think, rise a little bit in the eyes of the development world. So if the board approves this resolution tonight, then we will begin the formal process of engaging with MEDC to try to obtain that certification. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
You sat through this on planning commission.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I supported the motion that was made, so I think it'd be a good thing if we were so inclined, if somebody else made the motion, therefore, a lot of.
Do you have anything to add from the planning commission perspective?
No, I mean, it was a good discussion, I mean, with the opportunities that it could potentially give us, I think it's just a good all-around thing, and it sounds like, as our manager stated, that it's kind of, you're already developing those practices anyway, so let's get certified and have potential for grants.
Yeah, I for one was kind of excited to see this. It not only reinforces best practices, but it advertises that, as you put it, to paraphrase. Is there a potential that that certification allows or may allow us access to any of the state grants?
It will. There are, and I don't know that there's a large number, but there are some grant programs that require certification to even apply.
I think this is awesome. Any other discussion? Happy to entertain any motions.
I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution of intent to the participate in Michigan Economic Development Corporation's Redevelopment Ready Communities Program and to pursue a Redevelopment Ready Communities certification as recommended by the Planning Commission.
Support.
The only other comment I'd make is this board has gone through some discussions of wanting to make sure that we're not creating roadblocks, and this is one more mechanism to help us ensure that we're encouraging smart growth in this community. Anything else? All in favor of this resolution? Thank you.
Supervisor Milky,
Yes?
Trustee Brown,
Yes.
Trustee Thering,
Yes.
Clerk Cody, yes.
Motion passes unanimously. That brings us to item 11B on our agenda. Introduction and first reading of the 2022 zoning ordinance text amendment. It's in your packet. I'm assuming everybody's had a chance to kind of go through that. Did you have anything you'd like to add to this, Mr. Stuhltreiber?
Just briefly, this is a continuation of our refinement of our zoning ordinance that was completely rewritten and adopted back in September of 2020. As was mentioned back then, it would be expected that as the administration, the people that are impacted by this ordinance, as we use it over time, we discover where certain tweaks and refinements can be made. We went through that and did some of those about it was in November of 21, I think. And then, roughly a year later, as we continue to use it, we've identified some other things that maybe it's internal consistency between sections, that kind of thing, where there's some cleanup to do, and that's what this is about. There's a list in your packet on page 57 that highlights the proposed amendments. I'm not going to go through all those, but there's updates to the PUD section, self-storage building section, some allowable use definition clarifications, typographical errors, those kind of things. If you want detail on that, Mr. Nanny's here. He'd be happy to answer any questions you have on that.
Thank you. Any questions or motion to introduce the first reading?
A motion to introduce and conduct a first reading for the proposed PTXT 22-01 set of zoning ordinance amendments as recommended by the Planning Commission.
Support.
Motion by Cody, support by Brown. Any other comments, discussion, questions? First, I want to say thank you to the Planning Commission and staff that are involved in all of this. I had the pleasure of being at the front end of the first rewrite of this incarnation of the zoning ordinance. Didn't get to stay and finish it. But the fact that we've had very little ZBA activity since speaks to it. And I'm proud that there's an effort to continue to refine it and make it even better. And it's rare that something comes to the board's attention that catches my eye, at least. And I'm glad to see some of that being fixed in here, where we've had issues in the past. I do want to ask a question. We had a process of ideally always going before the Planning Commission with issues prior to any kind of ZBA appeal. And I see that we've done some language in that. Are we comfortable that helps shore up that process, that applicants would know the process they need to go through?
We did attempt to clarify that, yes.
That's what I took from it, but I'm assuming you had legal look over it and everything else, so.
We have to work within the limits of the state act, but we did attempt to clarify it within those limits.
Thank the Planning Commission for all the work that this takes. Any other discussion? So we have a motion to conduct the first reading. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. First reading has been conducted. Thank you. That takes us to item 11C on our agenda, the source water grant agreement. Again, Mr. Stuhldreher, if you'd like to introduce this, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and you'll find some, the paperwork on this starting on page 89 of your agenda packet. We're asking the board to consider approval of a source water grant agreement between the Township and Eagle for the completion of some well exploration activities, and also naming Department Director Kim Smith, Public Services Department, is the grant representative. In 2017 and then again in 2022, the water reliability studies that were done both indicated that the water system would need to have some additional water supply capacity within the next 5 years or so. This grant is helping us move that activity forward. In November of 21, Gordy Frazier, our engineers, completed a well feasibility study to assist us in the first steps of trying to determine the ideal location for a future well or wells. And based on that information, one of the sites that stood out was located at Mission Road, just south of Deerfield. We own Township owns property down there. It's close to the Mission Road treatment plant. This grant is $38,700. The program that we're talking about here is $77,500. Township would pay 50%, the grant would pay 50%, and that will pay for drilling a test well, testing the pumps, conducting analysis of what's found in the aquifer, modeling, reporting, all geared towards eventually trying to create additional water source capacity so that we can maintain our permits as we move forward and as the township continues to grow and develop. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
I'll make a motion. If anybody has any questions, a motion to approve the source water grant agreement between the Charter Township of Union and Eagle for the completion of the well exploration activities, naming Kim Smith, Public Service Director, as the grant representative.
Support.
Motion by Brown, support by Cody. Further discussion, questions, comments?
Yeah, I think it's needed. It's a must.
I was happy to see this too. We've been talking about this for some time, and so nice to see the matching funds come in too.
Yeah.
So thank you, Eagle.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. Taking care of that too.
Nothing else? Clerk Cody, would you do a roll call of the approval for the grant and partnership with Eagle for public services project?
Supervisor Milky,
Yes.
Trustee Brown,
Yes.
Trustee Thering,
Yes.
Clerk Cody, yes.
Motion passes unanimously. That brings us to extended public, I'm sorry, 11, almost skipped half the agenda. 11D,
Sorry.
Policy Governance 2.1, Treatment of Consumers. This is Mr. Stuhldreher. This is more in your wheelhouse, so I'll allow you to introduce this.
Thank you, and you can find the report on page 108 of your agenda packet. The policy that you're reviewing tonight is 2.1 of your policy governance document titled Treatment of Consumers. This is an annual review that you do traditionally in the month of January. The policy wording is not terribly long. I'll just read it. With respect to interactions with consumers or those applying to be consumers, the township management team shall not cause or allow conditions, procedures, or decisions that are unsafe, undignified, unclear, unprofessional, unethical, untimely, indirect, inaccurate, or unnecessarily intrusive. There are some further limitations to that. Management team shall not use application forms that elicit information for which there's no clear necessity, that the methods of collecting and reviewing, transmitting, and storing the information, that we shall not fail to protect against improper access to that material. We shall not fail to establish with the consumer a clear understanding of what may be expected and what may not be expected from the services that we offer, and that we are to inform consumers of this policy and provide for a way to persons to be heard, particularly if they feel they've not been accorded, I'll say, the rights that this policy establishes, and that the township shall not fail to post and keep regular office hours so that citizens have a reasonable opportunity to take care of township businesses. That's the policy itself. My interpretation of this is that the Board of Trustees seeks to ensure application forms only elicit information that is necessary and germane to the subject matter at hand, that the information obtained will be properly protected from unauthorized access. Some of our forms, for instance, require social security numbers. We have to mask those as appropriate. And that the consumers, and I will say that the term consumers is used in the policy. It is used intentionally. It covers citizens and non-citizens that are going to be using the services of the township, hence the term being used, consumers. And that these consumers can expect to have a clear understanding of the services that are going to be provided. We're only going to provide A, not A plus 1 or A plus 2, certainly not B, and that we do indeed should be maintaining regular office hours. So that's my interpretation of this policy, and I justify that interpretation as being reasonable. There needs to be a balance that exists when interacting with the public. We need to ensure we're obtaining adequate information so that we can properly deliver the services that we're being asked to do, or that we are requiring somebody to avail themselves to. And at the same time, there's privacy concerns, whether it's, and property right concerns that we need to be conscious of and protect as we're able to. So that is what's justifying my interpretation of this policy. There is several pieces of data that's included in the report. I mentioned one. We do mask oftentimes the first several digits of the Social Security number, leaving the last four may be observable. Our applications for whether it's a land use application or a water and sewer work-related application, we're constantly reviewing those to ensure that we're only seeking the information that's necessary for us to conduct our business. We have continued to make more and more use of the website, providing for fillable forms and easy access, even if they're not fillable, to PDF documents that can be downloaded and filled out. We have design specifications on the website so people don't need to wade through all the ordinances to find out what oftentimes the rules are that people often are asking about over and over again. We do have staff that's on call 24/7 to respond to service requests or service requirements. Think water, sewer, mishaps in the middle of the night, or a frozen water main in the middle of winter. So, in my opinion, based on the policy, the data that's been presented, I feel like the management team is in compliance with this policy. Be happy to answer any questions you have, or any input that you want to provide.
Positive input from me as far as the management team. You know, I agree with you.
If there's no questions, then I'll ask what we should all be prepared for.
Sure.
So this was due in January, so I'm not going to ask the question if it was due, submitted when due, but it is, correct? The manager's interpretation, very important that we agree with that interpretation. Do you feel it lays out what this board is intending?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Agreed? Is the interpretation justified? Is there proof provided to explain why this interpretation is reasonable? There's certainly justification for it.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Do you feel the interpretation addresses all aspects of the policy?
Yes.
I do.
I do too. There's one item in here that I don't think is really missed in the interpretation, but I just want to highlight it. And that's item 4 in the policy. It says failure or management shall not fail to inform consumers of this policy or to provide a way for persons to be heard who believe they have not been accorded a reasonable interpretation of their protections under this policy. And there may be data that justifies that. I didn't see it directly. I also think that's a hard thing to kind of measure, right?
Well, they have the opportunity to email the trustees or public comment if they feel something, if they feel like they were not satisfied with.
Yeah, I think my point on this was a hard one for me to measure, and that's why I'm not faulting it for not being part of necessarily like the data. I know we've had situations where the manager has informed people of their rights, not in this from this section, but informed them of certain policies and allowed them to follow that policy to a different avenue for conclusion. And so
My take is there an avenue? And the avenue's definitely there.
I believe so too. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not suggesting there isn't, as much as I didn't expect that to see in the data. I'm not sure how, with the exception of, we gave so-and-so this policy wording, or we gave them a hearing to hear out a complaint, whatever that process is, or forward it to the Board of Trustees for resolution. Do you feel we're in compliance with the manager's interpretation?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Very good, thank you. That moves us to item 11E on our agenda, Policy Governance 2.5, Financial Condition and Activities. Obviously another important one. Mr. Stuhldreher, would you like to introduce this?
Thank you. Again, this is Policy 2.5, Financial Conditions and Activities. This is a quarterly report. This being reviewed as of December 31st, 2022. The report itself is due in January. This policy is rather long. I'm not going to read all the subtitles. I will read the top level policy, which states that with respect to actual ongoing financial conditions and activities, the township management team shall not cause or allow the development of fiscal jeopardy or a material deviation of actual expenditures from board priorities established in your ends policies. Again, there are up to 10 or 11 sub-policies of this that I won't go into, but it all has to do with making sure that we are paying attention to the financial condition, both as it exists currently and as we anticipate it to look and feel in the future based on actions that we're taking today. My interpretation of this policy is that no expenditures will be made or incurred that will exceed the expenditures that we budgeted for the current year, unless it's for an emergency purchase as outlined in policy 2.5.6, that the manager shall not make a single purchase or commitment, of course, unless it falls under 2.5.6, of greater than $10,000, or inform the board of purchases over $5,000 unless the purchase is for materials or services that are needed in the normal course of operating the township facilities. there are some components in the sub-policy that talks about payments, tax payments, where we act as agent for the other taxing units. We collect taxes on their behalf. We have to distribute those funds to them within certain statutory timeframes. So part of my interpretation is that those tax payments to these other governmental agencies are to be paid by state statutory deadlines. Payroll is biweekly. There's talk in the sub-policies about payroll and payroll reporting to the various state or federal agencies as required. So part of the interpretation is that all those are made timely, and that accounts payable invoices are processed and ready for approval at the first available meeting following receipt and proper review and processing of those invoices. Feel this is a reasonable interpretation of the policy, because when the budget is approved by the board, the way this organization is structured, from a management and operational perspective, the board focuses on policy, leaving the management team to operate within the guidelines that the board has established. And one of the primary guidelines is that we adhere to the budget that you all have adopted annually, and that we review that budget on a budget actual on an ongoing basis, make amendments to the budget as information becomes available to us. We become aware of either negative or positive variances to what the spending plan is when it was originally set out. We have attached several reports, departmental revenue and expenditure reports comparing to the budget, and I can say that with confidence and reasonable certainty that all the expenditures that we make are in support of your global ends policies. We did not incur any debt in the fourth quarter of 2022. We have continued to have reserves or fund balances at levels that allow for us to absorb certain negative shocks and to take advantage of opportunities that come along. We have some money in the bank that we can actually take advantage of those opportunities. One just came up. End of last year, we had an opportunity to extend the improvements to Lincoln Road farther east than the original plan. That was brought to the board. We had funding available, so we were able to do that, which kept having to close that road maybe 2 times instead of the one time. All taxes and benefit payments are paid to the state and the federal government, and the health care administrators. All those are made timely. You all receive emails from me on occasion when we do have an emergency purchase. I'll send you an email explaining why and what and where and all that. We do have, because of our reserves, we're in good shape from a cash flow perspective. So you sum all that up, and it's my belief that the management group is adhering to this policy. So thank you.
Questions? Comments? I'll add one comment, and you brought it up towards the end. Those emergency purchases that end up coming up, like a water main leak or something like that, I really appreciate those, and they seem always timely. And there's nothing we ever have to act on, but it's good information. And so that's an appreciated benefit of this policy. And thanks for being so effective at that. So with that, no questions, right, for our manager? Let me ask this board, this was due in January, it is January, so I'm not gonna ask that as before. Did you read the interpretation? You heard our manager providing the interpretation? Any comments or concerns on what you heard?
Very clear.
Likewise. Feel that there's proof provided that the, for the interpretation is justified, and that it's reasonable?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Trustee Brown?
Yes.
Do you feel the interpretation addresses all respects of the policy?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. The data that we have, which is a lot of pages here, do you feel that that shows compliance?
Yes.
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 I do want to point out, if any of the public is out there and has looked at this, see that Township has various funds, many of them in good shape. There are situations like the West DDA, if you look at that, you know, has a very negative balance on the year. Balance meaning we spent a lot more than we took in. And that could be alarming to someone that doesn't understand what's happened there. But trust me when I say that that was an intentional and expenditures that came up that we'd been saving for some time. And so when you see something like that, it was a very planned event, and it would be negligent if we weren't spending that money the way we did. And so I want to make sure the public's aware of that. So if they have concerns, all these balances look really pretty good for 2022, and I expect further good fiscal management from here forward, too. Is there anything regarding the policy that you worry about or is not clearly addressed that you'd like to see?
I'm satisfied.
Satisfied. Absolutely.
So no changes recommended to the policy at this point, correct?
Correct.
No changes.
We'll move on unless there's objection. That brings us to item 11F. This is more in our wheelhouse on the agenda. This is policy governance 3.1 governing style. Mr. Stuhldreher, do you want to say anything on this?
I do not, thank you.
Okay. I just saw your name on the agenda, so I thought you might want to say something. So this is really more our responsibility as a board. So this is a self-check on ourselves. And I'll just read the policy's short, so I'll read it. The board will govern with an emphasis on an outward vision rather than an internal preoccupation. Encouragement of diversity in viewpoints, strategic leadership more than the administrative detail, clear distinction of board and chief executive roles, collective rather than individual decisions, future rather than past or present, and proactively rather than reactivity. So I'm assuming you've all read through this. This is timely. By the way, this policy is a full page. I just read the introduction to that. Do you have any issues with how this is interpreted? Not really. You okay, clerk? Okay. Bear with me. Do you believe we're in compliance?
Yes.
I do.
I think so. I don't
You
know.
hesitate.
I do, because there's just a lot of different ways you can think about this in my mind. So I'm satisfied, but maybe that's something we can just improve on. When we talk, basically the paragraph that you read.
Can I piggyback on that?
Sure.
I think we're in general compliance. I think we do a good job of most of that paragraph.
Mhm.
There is a section, and this is on page 133 in the packet, 3.1.3.1. Says, in accordance with this discipline, the board will only allow itself to address a topic after it's answered these questions. Whose issue is this? Is it the board's or the manager's? And as you go through that, I think that's something we can improve on. I mean, we try to stay out of the weeds. We try to stay at that more visionary policy perspective. But sometimes we get in the weeds, and so it's just a reminder that we should always be asking ourselves, if we're taking something on, is it truly our role to take that on, or is it something that we need to affect via policy?
That's where I was at as well.
Oh, is that right?
I read that was one of those that I read. It's anything that happens, I know is not intentional. So, that's why I say I'm satisfied, because I know it's not deliberate. It's not, but definitely we should be asking ourselves that.
Yeah, out of more habit, right?
Right.
Yes. And I don't know that I do that to the best of my ability every time. Or
We
at
all
least-
could,
yeah.
myself, all of us can improve with that.
And as chair, I try to limit that, except when we're having it more or less formal discussion or informal discussion, because there are times when we need that. But if you feel that we're getting into the weeds, please call order to the meeting and help us all get out. All right, we good?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think we already discussed, if we weren't in compliance at all, what was that related to? Any other comments on that? How we can improve the process any further? Trustee Therian and I were kind of on the same page, apparently.
Yeah, the questions.
Anything we need to learn or discuss in order to live by these policies more completely? With regards to what was brought up by Trustee Therian and myself, any other thoughts or ideas on how we can better live up to what the policy says?
I think we keep the vision to the future, definitely not looking at past, because when we do that, when we start stepping backwards, is when we, I think, occur problems.
Yes. Any thoughts and changes to this policy at all? Because this is our annual opportunity. I mean, obviously, we can change it any time, but it's
Well, I
fresh
think
in front of you
we've
now.
recognized that we as a board need to improve on some of it, so I would hate to make changes on something we feel we need to improve on.
Okay. All good?
All good.
All right, with that, that finishes our new business. That brings us to extended public comment. Extended public comment is restricted to 5 minutes regarding any issue. Do we have anybody in the virtual? No. If you choose to address the public, please state your name and address for the record. Mr. Smith?
Brian Smith, 2284 Sandstone Drive. Just a couple things tonight. I know you're going to be having ARPA discussions soon, if you haven't already. Part of that, I was wondering if you've given thought to electric vehicle chargers, fast chargers. I know that this is a renewed emphasis by the state and federal government, and being the location next to 127, we know that there are significant gaps, especially as you head further up north. So if there were any strategic locations that the township could put some chargers at, they become destination stops. When you're mapping out a plan that you're going from Detroit or Lansing, you're going up north, when you're getting 200 miles, especially if you have a truck and you're towing, you're getting even less. You have to plan out your routes, a lot better. And so just saw at Jameson Park, you redid that. I don't know if the lighting is sufficient there, if it's enough traffic or anything like that, or if there's any other locations that would be possible. But that would be a great use to use your ARPA as a match for what Consumers Energy may be providing on grants. State and federal also have a ton of grants out there as well. So I just want to put that out there. Second, I want to commend the board, the sidewalk prioritization committee, the planning commission, and everybody on these sidewalks. I see that the list of sidewalks that you've completed and that you're working on is substantial. I know that you're working on the bluegrass gaps. There's some huge gaps in there because of easements, and I also know you're working on the one here from Ashland to connect in to the Township Hall. I think that would be great. I wish you success, continued success at getting those easements for that. I know that that's kind of a little stumbling block on some of them, but I wish you success on that, and please don't give up on that. I think getting those sidewalks in, especially on Bluegrass and right here, and connecting into the Township Park system, I think will be huge. I think it'll be very nice, and so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, good evening, trustees and all. My name's Tim Lannon. I live at 1129 Meadow Drive. I'm here to introduce myself, if any of you don't know me, and let you all know I have submitted my application to fill the vacant seat on the Board of Trustees. I'm a lifelong resident of Mount Pleasant in Union Township. My education includes I graduated from Sacred Heart Academy. I received a Bachelor of Science in Education from Central Michigan University. I've received a Associate's degree in Fire Science from Mid-Michigan College. And I graduated from the Township Governance Academy that's sponsored by the MTA. My employment includes 15 years in supply chain management and sales of high voltage electrical equipment to the electric utility companies. I worked for 15 years for the state of Michigan in the Department of Community Health as a fire safety officer. I spent 7.5 years as the safety director with Bandit Industries, and retired from there just over a year ago. I'm in my 31st year as a firefighter and medical first responder with the city of Mount Pleasant, which covers Union Township as well. And I served for 12 years on the Union Township Board of Trustees. I want to share with you something I think you might be able to relate to. I'll call things I wish I'd known when I first became a trustee. The budget, the budget, the budget. Budget development, budget adjustment, line item budget, financial audit, GASB accounting standards, bonding, borrowing, constitutional law, statutory law, master plan, zoning, land use, smart development, rural preservation, special assessments, road ends, river access, police powers, 2%, the Little Red Book, DDAs and tax captures, phaser ratings, equalization, stakeholders, community input, strategic planning, capital outlay, green energy, sustainability, transparency, emergency service agreements, quorums, special use, litigation, closed sessions, setting precedents, water quality, water rates, roads, drains, sidewalks, authority having jurisdiction, easements, liabilities, building consensus, recycling, and in the weeds. I also want to share with you a text message I received from Trustee Bill Hauk just 23 minutes prior to his last board meeting, December 14th. Tim, heading to my last BOT meeting. Thanks for the time we spent together on it. You were my teacher on how things run. As a citizen of Union Township, I thank each of you for your time and thought you give to develop the community that we desire. Also, it is my hope that you select me to join the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nobody's still in the virtual room?
No.
Seeing no further citizens coming forward, we'll close extended public comment at 8:26 PM. With that, that brings us to manager comments. Mr. Stuhldreher, you have the floor.
Thank you. Just a couple of them. Just want to let you know that Mr. Robert Somerville, who is Union Township's representative on the CRC board, was reelected as vice president of that board at their last meeting. We did receive the incentive check from Consumers Energy, from the Business Energy Efficiency Program. It was a check in the amount of $2,500, and that was the incentive to replace all the lights in Township Hall with the LED lights that went on. And we went through that exercise about a month ago, 6 weeks ago or so. We did receive that incentive check. I will be out of the office in the area planning from February 4th through February 11th. That's the work week, and a couple days on the weekends on either end of that. I'll be in the Upper Peninsula. I will be naming an acting township manager. I just haven't named that person yet. And then I will also, at least planning on being out of the office and out of the country up in Canada, February 25th through March 4th, again for some snowmobiling if weather permits. And then finally, I do want to let you know that we received from our assessor a notice of contract termination yesterday, and he will be with us through the end of April. Will be positioned, I think, pretty well for our summer tax roll, so that's good. We will start a process of filling that position as we did last time. We'll probably do a dual path just because of the nature of the industry. We'll be looking for a full-time W-2 employee. We'll also be putting out an RFP for contractual services. There's been some health-related issues, and you may recall that due to various circumstances, I've received similar letters a couple times in the past, and those have proved to be withdrawn or have ended up being withdrawn. This one will not be, so it will not be withdrawn. So we will begin the process of filling that position. So I just want to let you know that from my perspective, it's an important position in the township, but at the same time, it's just another position in the township. So we're used to a little turnover. We'll go about our business of making sure we get the best candidate that we can find to fill it. Business will continue.
Do you have, go ahead.
I was just saying, would you do the board a favor and send us the dates you'll be gone?
Yeah.
I was not able to catch them all on paper, so.
Yes, I would.
Thank
I
you.
would.
Trustee Theron?
With your experience as being manager of Union Township, do you, as long as the job is getting done properly, that's ultimately what we want to have. I mean, do you have, would you prefer to see an actual W-2 employee, or like you said, where we contract someone to come in and handle that? I mean,
There are pluses to minuses to both models. I am generally indifferent. My focus is that the work gets done the way I want it done, and the way you all want it done, and the way the community wants it done. Contractual relationships avails you some flexibility, and you spend a lot of time on contract administration is what you do there. And whereas a W-2 employee, you have a little bit more control because they're direct reports. They're not 1099, they're W-2. I have done enough, for a while we had a contractual relationship with a building official, and that worked out very well. Again, it's about service delivery. There are certain positions that exist everywhere of late, particularly in the public sector, that are becoming harder and harder to fill and find qualified individuals. And the assessing position is one of them. Building official is another position. Water, wastewater operators are another position. They're becoming increasingly hard to fill with W-2 folks. There's a lot of statutory responsibilities and legal deadlines from an assessing function. It's imperative that those are met and that we're able to assess property at the way it's supposed to be, which is essentially equitably. I think we're shooting ourselves in the foot if we don't go down both paths at the same time. That gives us the most opportunity to find service delivery in this area.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, that takes us to item 14 on the agenda, final board member comment. Trustee Therian?
Yes, talking about a plan B, is this something that's gonna be decided? How will that play out?
Here's my thoughts. As I indicated, I'd reach out to Trustee Bills because there was confusion on whether or not she would be available at the February 8th meeting. I'll first reach out to her and confirm or not confirm that. Then I guess my thoughts were that we'd go from there. If it is the 8th, that gives us 6 days beyond that if we need it. We do need 24-hour notice to call another meeting if needed. Does that feel comfortable to the three of you?
Yeah, that's fine. Anytime, if you need a special meeting, whatever we need to do.
Yeah,
To make it happen.
if we know Trustee Bills is going to be absent, I mean, obviously on the 8th, life can happen and someone could be absent. I hope not.
Well, the benefit of having two of the applicants here for them to know that we are thinking, we want to have as many, if we can have all 6 here, that's the goal. And
Yes.
if we have to hold a special meeting to attain all 6, then that's what we would prefer to do.
Yeah. We don't, I prefer not to make decision this
Right.
paramount with
For sure,
part of a board.
right,
So we all have a voice in it.
for sure.
Does that answer your question?
Yep, that was.
So I will communicate to the board once I've heard from Trustee Bills regarding her availability.
Okay.
And then we can kind of go from there. And 2 trustees or a supervisor can call a special meeting, but I wouldn't do that without getting some kind of polling to make sure that we would get full attendance.
And regardless, though, something should go out fairly quick to the applicants so they understand what the process is.
That's fair.
I mean, I knew when I came in that I was gonna get up, I was going to
How about-
present and ask questions possibly.
I can draft something and then send it out for review and comment. And
Yeah.
Is that fair?
I think it's just fair to the applicants that they know exactly what's before them.
Yeah, it's probably better to get that out sooner than later. I
Yeah, for sure,
agree.
because
Yeah.
regardless of the date, that's gonna happen.
Yep, that
Okay.
seems very reasonable.
Thanks.
And I'll try to be short and sweet on that.
Yeah.
I don't think this is complicated.
No,
Very good. Are you all good?
yeah,
Okay. Clerk Cody? Trustee Brown?
I'm all set tonight.
I'm going to make a nerd of myself here. I always enjoying watching the State of the State for whatever reason, and it was on tonight at 7. And since being back on this board, I've had to record it. So I recorded it tonight, but I'm looking forward to watching the State of the State and seeing what our state government is looking at for priorities this coming year. I do want to comment, Mr. Smith and the audience here tonight mentioned the EV fueling stations. I appreciate the comment. It's something that's been certainly on my radar, and I know there's been conversations in the community, so I appreciate you bringing that back up as well, though, because I think if we don't continue to remind ourselves of that, we may lose sight of it.
Because it's gonna be, when there's more vehicles out there, then
It's coming,
yes.
for sure.
Whether they're electric vehicles or not, they're coming.
So anyways, I really appreciated those comments, and I just wanted to comment on that. And with that, we have no further business, so I'm happy to entertain any motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Support. Motion by Cody, support by Brown. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned, 8:37.
Trustee
Thank you,
Cody.
everybody.